There is a question that comes up over and over again on the main subreddit for horror, r/horror. And whatever the specific phrasing, it's basically, hey guys, can you recommend some mind-bending, psychological or mindfuck horror? So mind-bending horror, as I'm going to call it to avoid swearing throughout the whole darn video, is rare, but it is very popular, and understandably so. This horror subgenre offers really unpredictable stories and, at its best, nightmarish, creative and incredible imagery that really challenges your assumptions and makes you question what the heck it is you're seeing.
Girl, what are you doing?
Research.
Oh, right.
But more than that, mind-bending horrors have the freedom to get weird and do stuff that other horrors just can't do. They can create these nightmarish worlds inside characters' heads and switch it up by making the horror internal and not external. But interestingly, the best features of the mind-bending horror subgenre, the stuff that people love it for, are also its weak points. And that's what I'm going to cover in this video. If that sounds interesting to you, if you like analysis of horror with occasional chickens, then that's what I focus on, so do me a favour and subscribe today. Even if you're me, you need a break from slashers sometimes. You can appreciate finesse within the confines of the masked killer formula, but sometimes you need something completely different. Now, mind-bending horror is very different, although it very much has its own formula. And I'm not really talking about surreal horror here, stuff like Ari Aster's Midsummer, although they can cross over. I mean, you can always cross over. We have had mind-bending slashes. In horror, pretty much anything is possible. This horror subgenre focuses on bringing in memorable elements that are unreal and nightmarish, putting regular characters in impossible physics-breaking situations. They stand out for having these hallucinatory, nightmarish sequences that really stick in your head, and I guess some horror fans just really like the feeling of their heads being messed with. These sequences aim to unsettle you, to make you really question what you're seeing, maybe doubt if you're awake, if you're really in reality. Sometimes it's just a distracting, if delightful, non sequitur. Now, horror has always featured the unreal and the impossible. I mean, monsters, after all, are unnatural, impossible creatures. But in regular horror, we have always firmly known that our reality was correct and that monsters were the violations of that reality. In mind-bending horror, that confidence in our reality and our perceptions is precisely what is attacked. And from that, you get the unforgettable and infamous reality-distorting sequences that leave you feeling unsettled, nauseous and disturbed. They foment feelings of disorientation, of uncertainty and paranoia, and all these are very potent sources of fear. But these strengths of mind-bending horror also carry inherent weaknesses. Now, the biggest risk and the biggest weakness is that if you can't make sense of the character's reality, then your unease and confusion can very easily transfer into bafflement and disconnection from the story. After all, if you don't understand what the heck is going on, you won't understand the stakes or the story itself. And without that understanding, it takes a lot more emotional connection with the character in order to make the story matter to you. One of the most frequently recommended mind-bending horrors is Session 9, a film that starts off grounded in this very believable, gritty reality, and every time it just kind of loses me once the mind-bending stuff really kicks in. Increasingly, the scenes stop being coherent, the characters stop behaving in comprehensible ways, and they lose their logical flow, and so I literally can't tell what's happening. And so even though the imagery is amazing, I end up disconnected emotionally from the story. Another major problem that's inherent in mind-bending horror is that they frequently rely on showing protagonists being threatened by things that are not real, that are hallucinations. And the trouble with this is that these are often jump scares and they don't carry an obvious threat with them. And even though these represent real threats to the character's sanity, to the audience we get the message that it's not a threat, that the character won't be hurt. Once you feel that, the film stops being as scary. This problem is pivotal to one of the classics, A Nightmare on Elm Street, your favourite horror film about the Vietnam War. Now the brilliant nightmarish imagery is still there, but Wes Craven saw this problem of us not taking the threat seriously a mile off, and he fixed it. He knew that the dream sequences can be visually scary, but they need to carry consequences. By making Freddy Krueger able to kill people in dreams, you carry on registering the nightmare world as dangerous. You still get to have all the unreality nightmare stuff, but with real consequences. The final vulnerability of the mind-bending horror subgenre is that it can attract really bad writing. In short, the problem is, hey, if we're in a logical, nightmarish spooky verse, then it doesn't matter if nothing makes sense, right? Sometimes it seems like the inherent unreality of the mind-bending horror subgenre is an excuse for a lazy writer to just throw some scary stuff in wherever they want and know that it doesn't need to impact on the later plot or even be consistent in any way whatsoever. In fact, a major trope of this subgenre is someone just straight up telling the protagonist that something we all saw didn't actually happen, just overwriting our reality completely.
Because I had dinner with Paul Allen twice in London, just 10 days ago.
No, you...
I'm sorry to differ with you, sir. But you are the caretaker. You have always been the caretaker.
Yeah, Styles. Skyler, that's the word you say I sent with you. But I know I sent you off the bone.
Greendale is purgatory, and I am the devil.
What?
Knew it.
Stop letting him make you realize stuff.
This kind of screenplay laxness is what TV tropes calls the rule of scary. If it gets a good scare, a good shock, then just throw it in and who cares. In slasher horrors, the classic example of the rule of scary is a body popping up in the last reel somewhere, eyes gouged out, fingers cut off, and... Sorry, I got into a groove there. This sort of thing. They're hoping that in all the terror and frenzy of the finale, this last little scare will get the result they want and you're not going to stop and think, where was that body secured and why did the killer take the time to do that? In mind-bending horror, the rule of scary tends to be used a bit differently. It tends to be expressed as a scene whereby someone that the protagonist has been looking for the whole movie tells them straight up in a long speech, hey, ignore the last 80 minutes, you imagined all that, I'm going to give you the real deal of what's actually been going on in the final 5 minutes, don't think too hard.
Did you see that Alessa was a good little girl? Even though nobody looked at her that way.
Where did this come from? How do they know so much?
It's always painful to remove the cassette. Change the program.
Yay! Revelation! Resolution! Roll credits. Very clever indeed. Big brain stuff. It is fun, but let's be honest, without good grounding, it is weak writing. It's really not that far from, and they woke up, and it was all a dream. You just kind of like sprinkle a little psychological seasoning on there. If we're honest with ourselves, this is usually lazy hack writing that is passed off as creative and profound by people who don't see the cheap trick. Is that a death knell to the film's success? Absolutely not, and lots of films have delivered their revelation scenes really well. They've laid the groundwork throughout the film and they've made the nightmarish world consequential. If you want a one-sentence summary, mind-bending horror can be incredibly powerful because it can ditch the rules of reality. But that makes it more important than ever to follow the rules of storytelling. That is all from me this week. I hope you found it thought-provoking, and I'd really love to hear from you below in the comments of your experiences with the mind-bending horror genre. I'm pretty sure there'll be a fair few good recommendations in there. And as ever, if you like what I do, please do give this video a like and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Maybe even recommend my channel to a friend. I'm a tiny channel and every new subscriber is an absolute delight. And I will leave it there. Next upload is on Tuesday. Thanks, y'all. Cheers. That is disgusting. Oh my god, that was not worth it.
Durango 95 purred away real horror show.